How's it going, guys, and welcome to this tournament showdown between the Gobbo King as the Warriors of Chaos and Pippington as the Beastmen led by Malagor the Dark Omen. So guys, let's jump right into this match and take a look at some of these builds. So on the front line, it looks like the Gobbo King does indeed have a bit of a Sirtha Ek inspired build. So he has 4 groups of the standard Marauder Horsemen, a couple groups of Chaos Marauders with great weapons in the back, then also some Chaos Chariots. So man, he's definitely ready to party. But all jokes aside, I definitely don't think the Marauder Horsemen are a bad pick. These guys can do some pretty good skirmishing damage against lightly armored targets, and some of the units that you really see in this matchup quite a bit are the Minotaurs with great weapons. And as you can see, they have no shields and they only have 35 armor. So if the Gobbo King's really on top of focusing those guys, as well as this Beastman, well, it's not called a Beastman Giant, it's just a Giant, but if he can focus the Minotaurs and the Giant with these Marauder Horsemen, he'll definitely get his money's worth. In the secondary line, he does also have a couple groups of the Chaos Marauders with great weapons. And these guys are actually a pretty good pick against the Vestigors, because, most of the time, Beastmen players are always going to bring a front line of Vestigors. They have pretty good armor-piercing damage, can trade pretty efficiently with Chaos Warriors, even do some decent shock damage against Chosen, so they're pretty much the safest way to go for the Beastmen. So bringing these guys in the secondary line is definitely not bad. The very expensive Vestigors will obviously win in a one-on-one trade, but still these guys will hold their own for their cost. In the back, he does have a couple groups of the Chariots, which, even though they're not the heavy, Gorby's Chariot with the really heavy armor-piercing values, these guys still will do pretty well against most infantry units. So if he can kind of saturate these Chaos Marauders with the Chariots and get some really good damage on these Vestigors, he should be in pretty good shape. The one thing he needs to watch out for, though, is the Minotaurs with great weapons and the double Gorbel, as well as the Giant. All of those are units that are going to be really efficient against Chariots, because obviously these guys cannot push through that much mass. On top of that, he does have a couple groups of Forsaken, which I also think is a must in this matchup. So these guys are really good for pressuring the flanks. And honestly, with 46 movement speed, you can get up and around, you can surround the Minotaurs, and even though Minotaurs, I think this variant of the Minotaurs will struggle against Forsaken, because they only have 35 armor, and these guys hit like absolute trucks. They have 63 weapon strength, only 14 of that being armor piercing, whereas when you look at like a Saurus Warrior, for example, they have 52, but 18 of that is AP. But nonetheless, these guys are definitely specialists against squishy units. So if they have like Ungor Raiders, or Minotaurs, or even Centaurs who are kind of compromising your back line or pressuring your flanks, the Forsaken are a really good tool for kind of taking those guys out. On top of that, the mighty Gobbo King does have a Chaos Sorcerer Lord of Death atop his Chaos Dragon. So he does have the Dark Fire of Chaos, he has Spirit Leech, and Fate of Buna. In the back, he does have a couple of Halberds. I think, looks like he has 2 Halberds, which is definitely, pretty safe inclusion. The Halberds actually trade okay with Vestigors. They do lose 1-to-1. They're a Halberd unit, not really meant for like great weapon versus great weapon conflict. But they do have an anti-large bonus, really good AP values, and definitely a very solid pick here. So I think that's pretty much it for the Gobbo King. But man, I'm really excited to see how these Marauder Horsemen do. Sirtha Ek would be proud. But for Pippington, he has 2 groups of Centaurs over here with the great weapons, which are also a very good pick. They're going to be a pretty hard counter against Chariots, and honestly, these guys can get some really, really good shock damage against Chaos Warriors. But their armor piercing is going to be a little bit wasted on the Chaos Marauders, but nonetheless, they're mobile, they hit pretty hard, have a great charge bonus, and they're also rowdy, I think is what it's called. Well, it's perfect vigor, but I don't know what the trait is. But yeah, they basically don't get tired. I think it's conditional though, because I know that the Living Saints for the Bretonnian Knights is like perpetual throughout the course of the battle, but yeah, is it this one? Yeah, so this one's while they're rowdy. So when their leadership is wavering, I guess they lose their vigor. But yeah, still, I really like these guys quite a bit. Aside from that, Pippington does have a couple of Gorbels, anti-large, armor-piercing, and one of the things that I usually do when I play Chaos against the Beastmen is I like to bring Shaggoths. Like I like to bring Kolek. I also like to bring, a Dragon Ogre Shaggoth. So the Gorbels are a really good countermeasure against that. But yeah, I'm not sure how they'll do here. I mean, they'll do pretty well against Forsaken and definitely will shut down the Chariots if used correctly, but yeah, it'll be cool to see him in action. So he's got 2 Gorbels, he's got a bunch of Vestigor herds, he also does have some Ungor Spears in the back line, Minotaurs with great weapons, which as I mentioned before, are also a very good countermeasure against the Shaggoths. But a lot of times you don't expect this many missiles from Chaos, so you bring these lightly armored big targets like the Cygor, and well, I guess the Cygor is summoned from Malagor, but also the Giant and things like that. But man, the Gobbo King definitely has got some tricksy tactics going on. Aside from that, he does have Malagor the Dark Omen, and you can see he just summoned a Cygor here, and I think that's pretty much it. So guys, without further ado, let's get this show on the road. So you can see that the hordes of Sirtha Ek over here are going to be skirmishing with these Centaurs. And the Centaurs are very fast with 95 movement speed, but if you're just really aggressively clicking away with the Marauder Horsemen, the Centaurs usually won't be able to catch you very easily. So these guys are going to be kind of getting some good skirmishing in here, getting some very good damage actually against these guys. But unfortunately, that's the issue. When they get close enough, they get a bit of a charge bonus. You can see how they're accelerating, and look, they're just glitching out over there so horribly. So they're actually going to catch these guys, but if the Gobbo King just keeps clicking back as fast as he possibly can, he'll definitely get away here. You can also see that the Chaos Sorcerer Lord looks to be getting in position for probably a Faded Boon on those Bestigors. Yeah, and it looks like they traded pretty evenly here. These Centaurs with Great Weapons took a bunch of damage. He did take a bit of damage, the Gobbo King, on his Marauder Horsemen, but still probably a pretty even trade. You can see the Gobbo King is also going to be pulling his Forsaken up here to kind of fend these guys off, and that's something I really like these guys for. They're quick enough that they can get in there and kind of intercept Cav, and you can see they're definitely going to tear down some of these Centaurs who are extremely squishy. They only have 20 melee defense, and they also only have 35 armor, so against a 40 melee attack and 63 weapon strength of these Forsaken, it's definitely going to be a rough time for those guys. So the Gobbo King does actually get some of these broken off, but they'll most definitely rout. So it looks like he still has, pretty much all of his Marauder Horsemen intact here. So it looks like he did also bring a Chaos Feral Manticore. So there's something that got changed about these guys, Mortal Empires. If you guys take a look, the Chaos Feral Manticore and pretty much all of the Feral Beasts in this game now, they all rampage. So if you look here, you can see the little rampage tooltip. So definitely a pretty big nerf. On that same note, you can see the Gobbo King actually did use a Faded Boon on the Bestigor herds. Definitely very well played. You need to work those guys down. They're one of the better units on the roster over here. And he does also have Spirit Leech that'll help against the Giant and also against Malagor the Dark Omen. So you can see the Surtha Ek forces are going to be moving up and around the flank. The Marauder Horsemen can definitely kind of just sit here and chip away at this Giant. And let's see how the Centaurs are doing. So the Centaurs are actually really beat up, man. They definitely got the shorter end of that stick in that trade with the Surtha Ek forces over here. So the Chaos Dragon probably posturing up on the side, because if he gets like a really good flame attack from the side here, he could definitely do some massive damage against these Bestigors. So it looks like the Chaos Dragon Breath is going to be coming down. I'm not sure what he was targeting there, but oh man, look at that. Look at that carnage. So it hits the Bestigors as well as these spears, and just look at the like frame rates just drop in my game. That's just sheer brutality. So he roasted a lot of those spears there. I think he was targeting the Bestigors, but it looked like they were able to move the last second. So then the Chariots are coming in here doing some pretty good work, just kind of knocking over these infantry, and the spears aren't braced right now, so they're not going to get that charge defense. And you can see the Dragon Breath plus the Chariots coming in there is going to do some really good work. But now it's going to be a little bit scary. This Chaos Giant is definitely going to cleave some of these Chaos Marauders, and Great Weapons aren't typically great against like large Giant type units, so they're really going to struggle here. But in the back, the forces of Marauder Horsemen are going to be gathering up here and probably starting to, fire at, well, it looks like they're going after Malagor the Dark Omen a little bit, but he'll probably be switching onto the Minotaurs as soon as he gets in range. Yeah, there he goes. So you can see the Gobbo King going to be using them against the Minotaurs like we thought, and that's actually going to be really cost effective. The Minotaurs definitely starting to get chipped away a little bit. Looks like the Chaos Dragon did get in there, gets hit with the Traitor Kin, which also slows by, is that a 48% speed debuff? Is that what it was? Man, that's actually really good. So the Bestigors are fighting against the Chaos Marauders, and again, the Chaos Marauders will chip them down a little bit. They have really good armor-piercing values in terms of their overall proportion. They have 27 weapon strength, and I think 20 of that is armor-piercing. So yeah, you can see they're getting some pretty good work in against these Bestigors. There's also a huge horde of these Marauder Horsemen just kind of throwing spears into this big blob. You can also see that Pippington has a Cygor in the back who has gotten 48 kills, so that's really not bad at all. Personally, I really like to use these Cygor as like more of a close-range summon. So you get into the main fight and you summon the Cygor on top of their infantry like Marauders, and it's really good at like terror routing. You can see the Minotaurs are just sending these guys kind of flying right here, but they're also getting pretty low. You only have 9 models left, and yeah, they're going down pretty quick. I think this is one of the few matchups in which the Minotaurs with great weapons, or Minotaurs in general, can work, but if someone brings like a very like Marauder Horseman heavy army like this, man, that's a pretty good counterplay to those Minotaurs. So the Chaos Lord, the Chaos Dragon, Chaos Sorcerer, whatever you guys want to call it, does land right here and takes a little bit of damage from the double Gorbel. So man, that is such a perpetual threat. Those 2 Gorbels plus Minotaurs plus that Giant, like this Dragon is just not safe to land anywhere. But you guys can see the bounce power is starting to shift very, very heavily in Pippington's favor. He pretty much crushed that Chaos center line. He still does have, the Gobbo King still has some Chaos Halberds here fighting and doing some pretty good anti-large bonus against his Giant, but for the most part, it looks like Pippington's forces have just run him down. So Pippington's Minotaurs and Centaurs are just crushing the last of these Chaos Marauders. You can see they're all just like yelling as they're running and just getting plowed by all these filthy beasts. But man, that is a rough run. So it looks like the Gobbo King is going to land his dragon to try and like help him out for a moment, but every time he lands, it's so risky. He's at about 2k HP right now, but 1 or 2 attacks from those Gorbels could easily set him down to like 1000 HP, like I was about to say. He's at 1200 now. He's definitely going to need to pull out. That's what she said. And yeah, it's looking pretty tough for the Gobbo King right now, guys. So the bounce power in Pippington's favor, about 70%. Looks like the Gobbo King still doesn't have all of his Surtha Ek hordes though. You can see the Chariots as well as these Halberds over here are just like running over these beasts. They're broken, and it's definitely going good for the Gobbo King in this part of the battlefield. And also once this Cygor dissipates and stops throwing rocks, that'll definitely help out quite a bit. But basically, the Gobbo King just needs the kite right now. He needs to use all of the ammunition he possibly has on these Marauder Horsemen and just try and wear down this kind of a big death ball. This is going to be a really tough shell to crack. You can see there's still 9 Minotaurs with great weapons, though they're very low. So any damage they take is probably going to start killing models here. You can see that the Marauder Horsemen are just sitting here, definitely giving me some traumatic flashbacks of the campaign. Man, the first campaign I ever played was an Archaon campaign actually, and I remember just being like, oh, let's go fight the let's go fight the Norskins. This is going to be fun. And man, I was sure taught a cold lesson in reality in this game. It was pretty fun. But the Marauder Horsemen right here are still thrown away, and they have a bit of ammunition left. You can also see that the Giant is getting Spirit Leeched, and the Gobbo King probably still does have some decent Winds of Magic. So for those of you guys that don't know, each Lore Magic in Total War has a different trait, and this one has Life Leeching. So you basically, whenever you're casting, get an improved Power Recharge trait, which is definitely pretty cool. So you can see the Marauder Horsemen hordes are kind of just picking off these Bestigors. They're like trying to charge them down. You can see the Marauders are kind of rallying here, but they're definitely not going to last for long. But the Gobbo King getting some really, really good fire on this Giant. You guys can see the balance of power is starting to creep back just a little bit. I mean, it's not, quite back to halfway, but this Giant is actually probably going to go down fairly shortly here. And the Gobbo King also still has a fairly healthy Chaos Feral Manticore. His Chaos Sorcerer Lord is still very powerful, 520 weapon strength. He just needs to be careful. If he can isolate any of these units, like Malagor, get split off from the main army, he could definitely get some good damage in. So you can see the Gobbo King is going to be landing the Manticore, trying to get some, decent little damage in on, Malagor, who is very squishy. But the Giants and the Gorbals are definitely going to come in and just lay a smacking on this guy. So yeah, you can see he gets put down to 600 HP, 200. He's probably going to croak here against the Gorbals. So yeah, he tried his best for sure. But the Manticore is going to go down. You can see the Giant is just standing up there cackling. And the Gobbo King does have his Chaos Sorcerer Lord just waiting up in the skies. He definitely learned his lesson from that Manticore. But the Surtha Ek forces really coming in hard right here, getting some really good peppering. And the Giant's very low, and down goes the Giant, guys. So it looks like the Gobbo King is still putting up a very good fight. The Giant's going to crumble right here. But Pippington also still has Malagor and two fairly healthy Gorbals, but this is actually really bad for Pippington. They're still pretty much full health of Chaos Warriors with Halberds. They're anti-large, armor-piercing, so you can see a really good Spirit Leech as well. And it looks like Pippington's forces are starting to get peppered down a little bit, so this is definitely going to be evening out the balance of power. And the Gobbo King keeping his Lord in the air is definitely a very good idea here. So man, I really like his play with the Marauder Horsemen. He's been pretty good at keeping them alive. Like, against the Beast Meta, it can be pretty difficult to use these guys, especially if they bring, like, Warhounds and things like that, but it's a bit of a mind game thing. I feel like a lot of Beastmen players aren't going to expect this type of strategy, so they're not going to bring, like, the resources to handle skirmishers in this matchup. So you can see that the Gobbo King does have his halberds right here, and they do have this Gorbal, pretty much surrounded. And some of these Patriots of Surtha Ek are going to be surrounding the Gorbal and kind of just, like, slowly peppering him down. It looks like he's trying to, like, bath out here, but there's no escaping from the Chariots and the Marauder Horsemen. On top of that, you can also see that Malagor the Dark Omen is pretty much surrounded as well, and his melee stats, actually 50 melee attack and 35 melee defense isn't terrible for like a caster lord. He's definitely going to get worn down. But guys, there goes the balance of power again, heavily in the favor of Pippington. He does summon a Cygor, so this Cygor is going to start stomping on these Warriors of Chaos. Even though these halberds aren't anti-large, kind of specialist, this Cygor is still going to be a force to be reckoned with. So you can see that Chaos Lord actually does land right there, and man, it's such a risky land. He's at about 1200 HP. But, pretty much all that's left is Malagor the Dark Omen and this Gorbal. And the Gorbal is, like, surrounded by these Cav who do have pretty good mass. So he's not going to be able to just push through those guys as he pleases. The Cygor is still kind of stomping the yard here. But again, the Cygor is going down very quick against those Halberds. And he still does have 63 Halberds. So since this, like, fighting started here, he's only lost, like, 7 or 8 Chaos Warriors. You can see the Dragon does land, but it looks like he takes another hit, putting him down to 600 HP, so it's so darn close. But Malagor is starting to get very low. He's shaken, and you guys can see the balance of power is now starting to shift back in the favor of the Gobbo King. Man, just a valiant effort. This battle is just tooth and nail. So the Giant going to be like kind of feigning a cycle charge right there, which is definitely a pretty good tactic. You land, kind of the enemy is going to be expecting it. So what they'll do is they'll start like pathing towards your Lord instead of fighting back on the ground troops. You're just kind of keeping that threat perpetually there. But Malagor, this is definitely not a situation he was designed for. But if he did have like a Traitorkin or something, he might be able to do enough damage to kind of like break a lot of these troops here. And you can see that the Marauder Horsemen here are actually shaken. But there's another group coming in who's just going to be ramrodding these guys. And as soon as his Cygor probably dissipates here, I think that'll pretty much be all she wrote. I actually think the Warriors of Chaos are going to take this game. So man, what a great battle. Very well played to the Gobbo King and Pippington. So this was actually in a tournament from the last weekend, and there was a lot of good games, so I'll do my best to cast as many games from that tournament as I can. But very well played to the Gobbo King and Pippington. It was a very unusual Chaos build, and that's something that the Gobbo King's really really good at, coming up with builds that are definitely a little bit out of the typical meta and making them work very well. So yeah, definitely check out the Gobbo King, guys. He has a YouTube channel. I'm sure he'll be in the comment section, but I'll make sure to put a link below. He has a lot of cool strategies, builds, definitely a really cool guy, and he also does live stream multiplayer matches like myself. But yeah, I do like the Chaos Marauders as a bit of a pick against the Bestigors. I mean, they seem to do pretty well, 30, 22, 36. And this is also considering they were fighting against a Giant, Minotaurs, and Bestigors, and then double Gorbal. They still were able to get this many kills. The Forsaken were a pretty good kind of like a roaming, like for any of you guys that play football football in the European sense or soccer in the American sense, they're kind of like a sweeper. Like they're able to sweep around the battlefield and kind of just address threats with their speed and definitely have some really good shock damage. The Death was very good against the Bestigors, and also the Spirit Leech was pretty good at focusing down Gorbals. And of course, the hordes of Marauder Horsemen were a really good counterpick against some of these big units. Like, if he had just hadn't brought these guys and just brought like a couple more Chaos Warriors or Chaos Knights or something, I feel like, he wouldn't have had the stopping power to take down that giant and probably would have just lost to this bad boy. So I definitely like that. So for Pippington, I'm still not a huge fan of Malagor the Dark Omen. I know he has some pretty good buffs, and like the Bestial Surge isn't bad, but I don't know. I still feel like Morker is a little bit of a better pick. And against Chaos, I'm a big fan of Lore of Death, but again, he was probably just experimenting with the build. But I know I've had a lot of people say that Malagor is like, they like using him more than Morker. So maybe, I haven't played too many games as the Beastman. I played maybe 3 or 4 since Mortal Empire's come out. So maybe I just need to learn a little bit more and kind of play with him a bit. But I mean, he did have ample protection. And as you guys saw, he was able to kind of get his maximum effectiveness out of Malagor. He was able to just keep him alive. Pippington did a really good job of just protecting him with the Gorbel, so he was never really threatened at any point. And honestly, those 2 Cygors definitely probably made a pretty big difference, so I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that. Because Morker did get some huge nerfs. I mean, you can only summon 2 groups of Chaos Spawn, and one of them you have no control over. Like, it just targets the nearest possible unit, so oftentimes it'll just be like a really cheap fodder unit. You don't really get that much value out of the Spirit Essence of Chaos. So yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe Malagor is the better choice now. I'll have to test a little bit more, but again, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below, guys. Also on top of that, Gorbals definitely did a pretty good job. Bestigors are a very safe pick. Honestly, like, you never know what your opponent's going to do, so you have to pick armies that are like the most probable to be like good against a multitude of different matchups. So I think the Bestigors are the safer pick against Chaos. They can really dump on Forsaken. They can hold their own. I mean, they will beat Chaos Marauders 1-1, but it's a relatively inefficient trait. And they're good against Chaos Warriors with great weapons. They're just a solid pick. Centaurs with great weapons also really good. I would have liked to see like one group of Chaos Poison Warhounds. I think that would have been very helpful. I mean, even like, just pretend you don't know about the Marauder Horsemen. I think that the Chaos Poison Warhounds are just good in every matchup. Like, if the Chaos Dragon had landed, for example, and gotten on the ground, he could have like poisoned them with the Hounds and then gotten a great surround with the Centaurs, gotten some really good counterplay there. And the Minotaurs with great weapons are definitely a niche pick. Like, I don't like them in pretty much any matchup except this one. Maybe against the Lizardmen to like work them against the Dinosaurs, but I do think that they're a decent niche pick against Chaos. A really good countermeasure against Kolek and Chagus and things like that. But yeah, the Marauder Horsemen were able to counter them pretty efficiently. And of course, the Giant isn't bad. Again, Chaos doesn't have the best missile play, so bringing Giants is definitely, this is one of the safer matchups to do it. So, anyways, very well played to the Gobbo King and Pippington. Hopefully, I'll get to a chance to play you guys on ladder soon. And guys, have an excellent night and take care.